last meeting of the year for 2020. But before we start today, I'd like to take a moment to put our attention to respect and honor and remember those National Guard members that lost their life in the tragedy not far from here, and also reflect and offer our prayers and thoughts to their families, the other soldiers, and their friends. So let's take a moment of silence. Thank you. Also, I'd like to thank those folks that were involved in the tragedy. I know the Sheriff's Department, when these things happen, you have to react. I know they did a wonderful job as far as taking care of some of those things, and some of the other folks, some charitable contributions, and the Krippner family as well. So I appreciate their efforts in this tragedy. So let's do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call will show that all commissioners are present today. The first item we have on our agenda is approval of the agenda. So, board members, staff, do we have?
There is one addition to the consent agenda. It's in the blue folder. It's an off-site gambling permit for the Farming Lions Club for March 27.
Oh, okay, I'll take a chance at putting that on.
Okay.
Any other additions or changes to the agenda? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Commissioner Clark,
Second.
Commissioner Notch. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. The next item we have is a special presentation. Ryan.
Thank you, Chair Persky, and as you all know, my name is Ryan Erdman. I'm a member engagement coordinator for the Association of Minnesota Counties, and I see your agenda is packed today. You have a public hearing and lots of folks, so I will just spend a few minutes, and I want to recognize a program here in Stearns County that did receive one of our outstanding achievement awards from the Association of Minnesota Counties just last week at the conference right up the street. The Stearns County Mental Health Steering Committee, I think, really defines what the award is all about. We give a handful of awards every year to counties that are leading and innovating in ways that make county government better, and I think this is a perfect example of that. When you look at the groups of people that are involved, I think Melissa and her team should probably get an award just for managing a committee with this many people on it. I've staffed a lot of committees, and I see courts, court administration, county attorney, city attorney, 3 divisions of human services, local law enforcement, the sheriff's office, the mental health center, Centricare, the VA, the jail. I think I might have even forgotten a few. Just managing the committee alone is a task. But to get those folks focused on the issues of mental health in the community, as I travel around the state, every county we go to, every time we ask about legislative priorities, we hear mental health. What are we going to do about mental health? So to see a program like this, the community action team that they've put together, it really, like I said, it really speaks to the innovation that's in this county. And there's, I don't need to go into the details of the program. You all know the program. It's here. It's something that you've all been doing all of these years. But there's a couple of things I really want to highlight, and part of the reason we want to do these awards in person. And that's really to give you, as the leadership, as the 5 elected county board members, and Mike as the county administrator, credit, because the culture of innovation is something that comes from the top down. Counties that receive these awards, counties that do these innovative programs, have the leadership from you folks that sit on the dais in order to have the flexibility to do that. But then I also want to make sure we're recognizing the staff. And I know Becky and Melissa are here, and there's lots of staff on the back end that actually execute and make these programs work. And so it's a 2-part thing, and it's an award that I think speaks to the entire county. It speaks to how engaged all of you are in trying to make this county better, do better for your taxpayers. The outcomes of this, Centricare is doing better with fewer emergency visits. You all are doing better with fewer jail visits. And at the same time, the outcomes for the individuals are better. We're not just saving the taxpayers' money, we're making lives better for these folks that struggle with mental illness. So it's a win-win. I don't know how many wins there are. It's probably 5 wins in there. It's win-win-win-win-win. So, I mean, I think it's really great work, and I think it's a credit, again, to you as elected officials that you give your staff the flexibility to create programs like this, to try stuff. I wrote up a summary that we're going to have on our website. I brought a few copies, not nearly enough for everybody, but it'll be on the AMC website. And before I did that, I used the nomination that you all crafted. I also sat down with Melissa and had a conversation about it. And one of the things that she said that really stuck with me was about that culture and leading with yes. Go in and assume that the effort will create the outcomes and believe that, and don't start with the reasons why not. And I think that's really important, and it's something that a lot of folks in government struggle with. But again, it speaks to the culture here that you all as leaders are giving your staff the flexibility to lead with yes, to be creative, to get these folks together and try and have solutions. So I think that's probably more than I need to say about a program you guys are so well acquainted with, but I just want to say congratulations to all of you, congratulations to your staff, thank you for being leaders, and congratulations on the County Achievement Award for your Mental Health Steering Committee.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
I was at the AMC conference myself. I attended the presentation by that group. And I'll tell you what, it just gives the counties an opportunity to look at it a different way, to treat it a different way. And I just want to applaud those folks involved, Melissa and all those folks that are doing what they can to change the paradigm of working with these folks. You know, it's ugly, it's messy work oftentimes, and it's sad what's happening in these people's lives. And when you put them into a squad or take them to detox or you incarcerate them, it doesn't make it better. And oftentimes it's a mental health issue more than anything else. And this effort to change is a savings for the county, which is good for our budget, but also just to reduce the suffering in humanity. So hopefully we'll be able to continue to do that work. And wish it wasn't there, but I appreciate the effort. So yeah, thank you. Okay. Let's move on to the next item.
I think there was going to be a picture.
A picture. Oh, well, a picture and an award too. Okay. All right.
The plaque is actually in the back of the room there, Ryan. If you
I didn't know we were going to get a prize today. So.
I noticed there's some other back there, but I didn't present any of them.
Well, I'll tell you what, we got a number of the people from the task force here. Why don't they come forward? Melissa, why don't you? Becky, come on. We gotta have somebody from the sheriff's department. Come on. Mike?
Who wants to hold it? You want to hold it? Hold the chair. All right.
I'm sorry, we're going to probably kind of move around. Yeah, can you guys kind of move? I'm sorry, we don't want that screen in the back.
Here, why don't you hold it?
I'm sorry. Could you be covering them up?
You can get closer, Melissa. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Mike?
Mr. Chair, should we give them a round of?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, let's. Again, very grateful for this opportunity to get this program going and the support also from the state as well. So hopefully, you know, more good things will continue to come from that. So now we'll move on to the next item, a public forum. Anybody wishing to speak today at the public forum? Is there anybody wishing to speak today at the public forum? Okay, last chance. Okay, if not, then we'll continue, we'll move on. Board members, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We did have one additional item placed on the consent agenda. Otherwise, we have items 1 through 15 on the consent agenda for one single motion, unless someone would like to pull some of those items.
I can move this.
Okay.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve all the items on the consent agenda, including the one added. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is a public hearing. Today we have a public hearing on the parks and trails.
morning, Commissioners. My name is Ben Anderson. I'm the Stearns County Parks Director, and with me today I have Sarah Weed, the Parks Operations Coordinator. The agenda item we have in front of you today is to conduct a public hearing to consider revisions to the county parks and trail ordinances. Some previous action that has occurred is ordinance numbers 524, the current park, and 525, the current trail ordinances were adopted in March of 2016. Some revisions that are being proposed to the county parks and trail ordinances include, but are not limited to, general document formatting, making the language consistent between the two ordinances, broadening the language to include similar devices when talking about tobacco and e-cigarette products, broadening the non-motorized vehicle category, and adjusting the speed limit for all trails. The most notable proposed change is removing the restriction on studs, metal traction devices on bituminous recreational trails. The Stearns County Park Commission supports the proposed amendments, and the County Attorney's Office has also reviewed the proposed amendments.
Okay. Before we open the public hearing, any other questions?
I just, can we open both items at the public hearing? Do we have to take them separately?
I think you can do.
You're the chair.
Okay, well, I'm just asking for your blessing, please.
God bless.
Thank you.
Get off the grass.
Okay. Okay, we'll take both of the ordinance changes together, so anyone wanting to testify at either the parks or the trails will have that opportunity, and then we'll take them on separate or joint motions at the end, okay? Perfect, okay. Any other questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Okay, if not, Ben?
I would just ask that if there is public here to comment, which ordinance they're commenting on.
Okay.
If they can announce that
Sure.
along right after their name. So.
Sure, good enough. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. If not, we'll go ahead. We'll open the public hearing on the parks and trails. Anybody wishing to testify today on the parks and trails? Okay. Please come forward. Go ahead, state your name, and then talk about the issues you'd like to talk about.
I'm Don Weaver. I'm involved with the St. Joe's Snowmobile Club, the Snow Joes. I've been a safety instructor since 1977. We have instructed thousands of youngsters in Stearns County. We really stress safety first. And we were thinking now with the newer sleds, there will not be as much use of studs on because the new tracks are giving you a lot better traction. But we think adding or taking off this stud rule would be a step in the right direction for safety. Because I think it was just the last couple of days here, some guy slid up to an intersection, not in Stearns County, but couldn't stop and slid into a truck. And on these older sleds, this is a problem, especially when you get off of the trail or going across the road to connecting trail. The state has a speed limit of 50 on the trails. And I just asked Ben here a bit ago if we had any serious accidents or stuff like this, and he couldn't recall any. And I don't know if the sheriff or DNR has been out in the last couple of years giving speeding tickets. But on the trail is wide, the club's provided smooth as best as possible, and 50 miles an hour we think is great just the way it is. I know Avon, I think, is the only one I can recall that has literally a speed limit going through town. But we would like to see it stay the same. And anytime there is an involved accident or something like that, we'd like to be made aware of any of this. Now, Ben hasn't stated what they're thinking on speed, but we'd like to see it stay the same. Can he answer a question on that?
Do we, as far as speed, is there a speed limit on the trail?
Yes, with the current DNR with the 50 miles an hour, we aren't proposing a change to that. I think there might be some confusion with the parks ordinance where we were changing the maximum speed limit on some of the natural surface trails.
Okay.
That doesn't have anything to do with the snowmobile trail. So we're not proposing a change to the speed limit on the snowmobile trails.
You aren't?
Nope.
Okay, that's, okay. I think that kind of wraps mine up, but the thing of it is, my wife and I, when there is sufficient snow, we love to go touring. We live over here right off of Norway at the Wobegon, and we jump on that, and believe it or not, the first night we spend in Superior, Wisconsin.
Wow.
You know, it's gorgeous trail. And then you can branch off and see the other stuff. Now, if these people were coming down here and they got studs on, where the heck do they go? See, it hinders, and there's other things that impact the statement of, you know, going into town to get gas or stay at lodging or anything. But we'd like to see it stay the same, eliminate the studs, and we can go from there. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Don.
Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay. Come on up, John.
I'm John Olmsted with the Sauk Center Snow Creeks, and I'm Region 3 Director at Admin USA. And according to reading the ordinance of Stearns County, you know, it's prohibiting studs and any metal traction device. So if we have antique sleds that come here with the steel cleats on, they can't actually legally drive on this Wobegon Trail. And we're having a antique race coming up here in January in Sauk Center. And in other words, if we keep this on, they can't run their vintage snowmobiles on the trail because of the cleats on the trail. So, and according to the Admin USA and everything, according to the state, when they lifted the ban on studs up in northern Minnesota and the rest of the state, pretty much, it was because one of the biggest reasons is they had to provide, the state statute says you got to provide an alternate route if you got a ban on the snowmobile trails. So, and up, you know, trail number 1 up through Walker and all the way up there, there was too many bridges and everything where they were going across, so they couldn't give an alternate route. So they decided they took a big study on the studs, and they realized studs was not doing any damage to the asphalt tracks. So they lifted all the. Stearns County is the only one that's got the stud ban on the Wobegon Trail. There's one short stretch on the east coast, eastern part of Minnesota, where about 3 miles, but they have an alternate route for all the studs to go on that alternate route because the trail, the snowmobile trail, actually lays alongside the tar trail. So that's pretty much what I hopefully we could lift the ban on it so we could use it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Anyone else wishing to testify? Anyone else wishing to testify on either the trail ordinance or the park ordinance? Ben?
I do have 6 emails, well, 7 emails in total that I don't know if it's appropriate now to read them into record or when that would be.
Well, I don't know about the length of time.
Okay.
Can
Can you
you,
summarize them?
yeah.
Yep, so essentially
Yep.
there's 6 in favor and 1 against.
Okay.
The only one that was against was Linden Township, and it was a unanimous vote. I do have some further information that I do think would be pertinent from the DNR and from our adjacent Douglas County and also Rocori Trail in regards to, it addresses the maintenance, potential maintenance concerns and damage from the studs. So if it's
Sure,
okay, I would
go
like to
ahead.
read through those. So I do have an email from Tim Edgerton, who is the area DNR, who manages the area grant and aid trails for snowmobiles. And the first email stems back from 2015 when we first initially started these discussions. And he says, to his knowledge, there are 3 paved trails that have stud restrictions remaining on paved trails: the Sunrise Prairie, the Harwood Creek, and then Wobegon. He was informed that Chisago and Wright counties did not lift their stud restrictions, and thinking back, this is in 2015 when this was written, on the Harwood Creek and Sunrise Prairie trails in this season, as requested by the local snowmobile clubs. For the past few years, the DNR has not had any issues with trail surface wear related to studs. Since the late 1990s, when the stud issue was at its peak, changes in snowmobile track technology have helped improve traction and braking, which has reduced the need or desire for studded tracks. Trail managers for the Munger, Heartland, and Paul Bunyan state trails can serve as informational resources if you would like more info. They have recent experience on managing the paved trails. The DNR in 2010 began systematically lifting the restriction on paved trails that it manages around the state, and in 2012 there was legislature changed so that paved public trails are open to studs unless otherwise restricted. And then I asked for an update on that email, and I'm just going to read through that quick. In response to your request for an update on our perspective or findings concerning the potential damage to paved state trails from studded snowmobiles, he has the following items to share. First, our DNR views, opinions expressed via email sent to you on December 8, 2015 have not changed. In checking with Mungers and some other popular state trails that allow snowmobiles, with studs such as the Paul Bunyan and Heartland and Munger state trails. To date, they have not had any concerns or issues to their trail surfaces since the bans were lifted. Trail surface maintenance problems have been more related to controlling vegetation, controlling the vegetation, and controlling woody stems coming up through the tar, and problems related to normal asphalt maintenance, including crack sealing, repair, and asphalt age. Second, there are not as many snowmobile studs like there once was when the shift from cleated tracks to rubber tracks happened. Since then, there have been great improvements in the rubber tracks and paddles. Tim checked with some various sources and local snowmobile sales vendors that estimate approximately 20% of the new snowmobiles that are equipped with studs. And to further support that estimate, MinUSA felt that estimate was about right and felt that studs weren't creating damage to the trails. However, these are unscientific. So this is last. Their understanding is that the Chisago and Washington counties still have their stud restrictions. However, John did mention that Chisago County does offer an alternate route right next to where their restriction is, right next to the current trail. Yeah, and then in some other conversations with Douglas County, who has the Central Lakes Trail that connects to the west of Sauk Center. They manage that section for the state, and I talked with the park superintendent up there. It actually connects directly to the Lake Wobegon Trail just west of Sauk Center. The state trail is maintained by the Douglas County, and they have not seen much damage from the studs since the restriction was lifted. And they use some flame tape for stop bars at each of the stop intersections, so essentially a tape instead of paint to show people where to stop, and they haven't seen any of those being ripped up or removed either. So I would, say that would be a pretty significant that tape's not going to hold up if the studs are doing damage. And then I also talked with the local Rocori Trail, the people that manage that trail, Kevin from Richmond, and they haven't seen any or much damage from the studs at the intersections either. And his comment was that actually they see more on the road crossings just because there's no snow there. So that's just the information that I had from some local trails. We do create a 50-mile or 58-mile gap in the trail system. By having our stud bans, so like they said, people coming in from the Sioux Line Trail to the north by Holdingford, coming down that, they may or may not see the signs. It is posted out there. Coming in from the west on the Central Lakes Trail is a trail that doesn't have this restriction. So I guess that's my comments from now. So.
Okay. Yeah. If we haven't closed the public hearing, I'll go ahead and I will close the public hearing. More board members, questions or concerns?
Well, I will mention a couple of things. First of all, I have been contacted by a couple of folks about that. Wabagon Trail people had asked me that we not move forward with the removal of the restriction. And of course, those are strong bicycle advocates about the trail. And of course, they appreciate the opportunity to use the Wabagon Trail during the non-snow times. And they're concerned about what potentially, putting the studs back on could be. Also, a couple of the previous park directors have also mentioned their concerns that we put the stud band on because they were concerned about the potential damage that the studs bring to the trail. The fact that the newer tracks are better tracks and that they're able to handle speed and stopping is one of the reasons why also that they feel that the studs are not necessary. Just curious too, I believe, Ben, is that we had discussion about the low number of snowmobiles actually that have studs. So it's not like we're restricting the majority of snowmobile participants or users, to do that, and it's a relatively small number. That being said, if the majority of degradation and damage is produced by a very small number, it doesn't seem right that everybody pays the penalty for just a few people that are tearing up the track. The other thing I guess I'm concerned about is that when there's snow on it, that's not a problem. And I see the snow keeps the studs from making contact with the asphalt. But then it only takes a couple individuals that just want to run crazy on the trails with their studs when the trail is bare, and those folks maybe account for the majority of the damage. So I can appreciate the testimony that was given here by the folks that are advocates for it, and I would be willing to lift the ban. But my question would be, what if we do see damage? What if we see that we got people that are abusing that? Do we come back and address it again? So my point would be I would be okay with lifting the ban, and then we just take a look and see what is actually taking place. Also, just in response to John, I'm excited about those antique snowmobiles. My grandfather had one. My good Lord, it was a rear drive engine, and it was maybe from the 40s or even the 30s, and it was quite a machine. The only thing is, again, if there's snow on it, it's not a problem. But because you're having a festival and you know how the weather is in Minnesota, don't run when there's no snow on the track. Just common sense. So, and I would hope all the snowmobilers would do that and respect the trail that we have, because the Wabagon Trail is a tremendous asset to all members of the community. So that's my personal opinion and comment. I'm reluctant to lift the ban, but I'm willing to do it as long as we're going to take a look at what transpires over the course of the next year or two. Steve?
Yeah, I guess my comment, I do snowmobile as well, and, we kind of go pretty much all over the state too, and really don't, in the areas where they don't have the ban, I haven't really noticed anything. You almost notice more from the aggressive wear rods, on the skis of the snowmobile than I think even what the studs will do, because they're meant to be able to dig in and make the turns and make you drive in a better way, I guess. It helps you with steering. So and I would say too, where I notice it, which most people probably do, is on the roadways, where they're plowed and they have to cross a asphalt road. You will see some markings, but again, a lot of times the people with studs, maybe the older ones don't want to replace those studs, so you're not going to be spinning out and doing stuff like that on these asphalt trails, because you're going to damage your studs as well. So I would see no problem lifting that ban.
Carol?
So I was part of the original statewide, I guess, imposition of that, because there had been a lot of concerns about what was happening with the trails. And I was glad when we started getting some information back that showed that, okay, maybe it was good to be cautious at first, but that we haven't seen the kind of damage that people had been concerned about. I think the comments about the newer snowmobiles make sense too. I am in favor of lifting the ban. I think that it's important that we do always look at what information, what data do we have as we move forward. You know, if we come back and we see there's some real challenges, we should revisit that. But at this point, it seems like it's almost it's kind of left over from a different era when we had reason to believe there could have been problems. So I support this change.
Any other comments from the board? Well, again, I would be okay with lifting the ban, again, as long as we have consensus that we will look at it if we do see damage on the trail. And that just goes to maybe as a warning or a concern out to those folks that would potentially abuse the use of those studs on the trail. Otherwise, you know, have at it and enjoy it. That's what it's there for. It's an asset for people to enjoy. So I'll look for a motion.
Do you want them both?
We'll take, first, yeah, let's take both.
let's
Let's
take
take them
both.
both. We got a long day ahead of us. And we're looking at all the changes that were stated in the
Parks and Trails. Mr. Chair, I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Okay. Commissioner Notch, second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Isn't there a second one, you said?
No, we took them both. Anything else, Ben?
No, that's all I have.
How are the ski trails?
Ski trails are in pretty good shape. However, Mississippi, the river flooded. So down by the river, it's super icy. We actually have the trails closed because as the river's receded a little bit, we've got in some places it's 8 inches thick, some places it's 2 inches thick, and then you're falling into a foot of water underneath. So we have closed some of the trails down there, so there's not quite the extensive ski trail system up there as of now. But Quarry Park, Warner Lake, and Kramer are all in excellent shape as of now. So we need more snow, though.
Okay, and don't we have an event coming up at Quarry Park?
Yes, we do. On January 3rd, we have the Moonlight Ski. It's a free event for the public. We have Prairie Woods Environmental Learning Center coming out with a bunch of skis for people if they haven't tried skiing or they don't have skis and they want to borrow some, they can. It starts at 6 and goes until 10 p.m. and there'll be some food and treats and stuff available too. So,
Are board members welcome to?
of course,
They are?
Looking
of course,
forward to
please
it.
come. So.
Just curious. Okay, January 3rd.
January
That
3rd.
evening. Okay, good.
Yes.
Sounds. Anything else for Ben? All right, thanks.
Thanks.
We'll move on to Public Works.
Good morning, Jody Tite, County Engineer.
How are you liking the snow, Jody?
Less than Ben.
Okay.
Today I have 5 contract finals for you, so I'll go through them one by one. They start on page 82 of your agenda packets. The first final payment that I'm asking the county board to authorize and approve is the 2018 Melrose Area Resurfacing Contract. That contract did underrun by just over $147,000.
Nice. I'll move that.
Okay. Commissioner Notch, second.
Second.
Commissioner Mergen, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Our next contract is SP 073-650-010. That's the County Road 50 resurfacing from just north of Cold Spring up to County Road 159 on the east side of Avon. There was a 1.3% contract overrun, primarily due to density and ride incentives that we paid on the contract. So I am asking the board to approve and authorize that final payment.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, and I drove that road yesterday. It looks very nice. All-
We did get a paving award for that road as well last year, so.
Should we present that?
No.
No. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
My next contract is CP 120-019-092, and this was the building demolition associated with the County Road 4 and 120 roundabout. That contract had an underrun of just over $3,300, so I'm asking the board to approve and authorize that final payment.
So moved.
Commissioner Clark, second, Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
Well, I guess so.
Bless you. Bless you.
And no award on the demolition, though?
No word on
Okay,
that
but
one.
that's okay. Okay, all those in
Could you
favor
work
say
on
aye.
that?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes.
My next contract is SAP 073-665-021. That was the County Road 65 bridge replacement over the Sauk River that took place in 2018. There was a contract underrun of just over $60,000, so I'm asking the board to authorize that final payment.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Knott, second, Commissioner Mergen. Jody, why was that, why is it, I mean, that was 2018, why is that finally coming to us now?
Well, oftentimes it takes the contractor a bit to get all the final paperwork. We do have somewhat of a warranty period where we watch to make sure everything, that nothing settles, that we don't have any issues with the concrete. And then it's just a matter of getting all the final paperwork from the contractor. And if we send it to them in the spring, they're oftentimes busy until the fall with new construction, so.
And that was a bridge that was in real bad shape.
Yeah, if anybody saw the videos put out by the Transportation Alliance, there was a 2-minute video on a bridge with hunks of concrete falling off. That was the old bridge that we replaced, so.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes.
And my final contract, final payment that I'm asking the board to authorize is on the 2018 resurfacing contract. This did have a contract overrun of just over $99,000. That is due to the bituminous patch, maintenance patching that we typically add on to our resurfacing contracts, and we did exceed that contract amount significantly because of the need, but that amount was still well within our bituminous patch budget. So I'm asking the board to approve and authorize that final payment.
I'd move that.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer,
Second.
Commissioner Notch, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes.
That's all I have unless the board has anything for me.
Question for
Maybe just a question, Jody. So a while back, they requested the speed studies and stuff. Does that occur like next year, or when do those take place?
Typically, they occur during good weather months, so if we would
Okay.
have a midwinter thaw, they may go out there. They want the road conditions to be optimal so they can truly judge what the 85th percentile speed is of the traffic. They have been taking a long time, and even if the studies get done relatively quickly by local MnDOT traffic engineers, they oftentimes sit in St. Paul for a significant amount of time. So yes, we are waiting on, I believe we have about a half dozen, some of which are in excess of 2 years old.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, TRICAP. Lori?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Morning, Lori.
I'm Lori Schultz, Executive Director of TRICAP. Administrator Williams invited me to come today just to talk about TRICAP, who we are, what types of services we provide, and how we complement the services that Stearns County Human Services provides as well. So TRICAP, we are a community action agency. We are one of 24 community action agencies in the state of Minnesota. Our federally designated counties that we operate in are Stearns, Benton, and Sherburne. However, we do provide some essential services in other counties such as Mille Lacs and Morrison County as well. Last year, TRICAP served approximately 5,000 households here in Stearns County. And our mission is to expand the opportunities for the economic and social well-being of the residents and the community as a whole. And so we do that in a variety of different ways. Our motto is we help people and change lives. And we do that by administering a variety of different programs. And so in your board packet today, there is some information to help guide us in talking about what we do. Because we do a lot, and it's hard to sometimes wrap your arms around everything that a community action agency does. The other thing I would say is that when you've seen one community action agency, you've seen one community action agency, because we're similar in nature, but we're different in the different programs that we serve because it's based on what the local need in the community is. I'll give an example. Most of the community action agencies in the state of Minnesota administer the Head Start program, which is an early childhood preschool program. TRICAP does not. We did back in the 1960s, and it spun off into its own nonprofit, which still exists today, which is Reach Up Head Start. Our signature program that I like to compare Head Start to is public transportation, which is not common for community action agencies in the state of Minnesota. So we really have three core areas that community action or TRICAP serves. The first area that we work with people on is meeting their basic needs. So one of the largest programs that we operate is the Energy Assistance Program. It's a federally funded program that's passed through to the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Last year, TRICAP served 3,300 households in Stearns County with this program. So it's a program that helps people pay their heating bills. If they're in a crisis situation, such as they have a shut-off notice or they're out of propane, we can assist with crisis funds to make sure that they have heat in their home. And then we also do furnace replacement and repair assistance with this program. By far, it's one of the largest programs in terms of the number of households that we serve. We
Lori,
also,
let me just interrupt. And I know
Yes.
that with that program, I know a good number of elderly people, low income, and they too, would be seeing, very high energy bills in the winter, but yet they qualify for this program. And
that is
helps
correct.
them out because they have no other source of income other than their Social Security, and this allows them to stretch those dollars. So.
That is correct, Commissioner Persky. In fact, 32% of the people that we served last year in Stearns County were ages 45 to 70 plus. So a high percentage of people that we're serving are seniors, and that's primarily through the Energy Assistance Program and then our public transportation and volunteer driver services as well.
So thank you.
You're welcome. And these are people that, you're right, they are on fixed incomes. Their incomes are not going to increase. And so by the services that TRICAP provides, it helps them to not make a decision whether or not they're going to pay for their medication or pay for food or keep their home heated. It is a valuable program to our seniors. We also provide housing assistance. And when I say housing assistance, I'm talking about primarily we focus on transitional housing. So that's a program in which we provide a rental subsidy for usually up to 12 months, and we provide intensive case management services along with that. It's to help people get on their feet, help them remove the barriers that they have, and then be able to be in permanent housing where they're able to provide for their own needs. We also do a lot of work with permanent supportive housing. So this is housing assistance where these are people who might have some more significant mental health challenges, and so we provide ongoing permanent supportive housing in which they also have a rental subsidy. And these are people that have been chronically homeless in the past, which means they've been homeless more than 4 times over a 3-year period. And so they really provide more intensive services to help keep them stable. We also provide supplemental nutrition and assistance outreach and application assistance. So what I like to say there is we help the county bring people that would be qualifying for the SNAP program. We assist them with completing their application, lessening the burden on your financial workers within the county human services program so that eligibility can be determined and people can get the assistance that they need for proper nutrition. And then, of course, we have transportation services. So we are the public transportation provider for Stearns County, with the exception, of course, of the city of St. Cloud and the surrounding Sartell, Sauk Rapids, which is Metro Bus. So TRICAP last year provided 64,000 public bus rides in Stearns County, with the majority of them being in western Stearns County. So we own a public transit facility in the city of Sauk Center. So we have daily city service in Sauk Center Monday through Friday, and we also do Saturday service in Sauk Center. We also have city route services in Paynesville, Albany, Holdingford, and I'm missing one, And St. Joe. And then we also provide some public transportation within a 10-mile radius of our Waite Park office. The majority of people that we are transporting are A, senior citizens, B, people with disabilities that cannot drive, and C, children. In Western Stearns County, we have a significant number of preschoolers and school-aged children that ride our bus system. And that is because the families can't get them to preschool, whether they have to work or they don't have transportation. And so we have found over the years that that is the most significant area where we're transporting young children. There is no income eligibility for our public bus program. That is the one and only program that TRICAP operates because it's for everyone. And so our motto is for $1.25, why drive? So if you would want to hop on our bus in Sauk Center, you would call our dispatch center and we'd be happy to give you that ride. The majority of people that we provide rides to are going to work or medical appointments or other social service needs that they have. And it is a vital component to making sure that people can meet their basic needs. We also administer a volunteer driver program. And this is one of the programs where we have a contract with Stearns County to provide some volunteer driver services for people who may need to get places that public transit aren't going to get them. So for example, it could be a family that's working on reunification and the child might be placed in a different city where the parents live and there's not a public transit route to get there. We'll use a volunteer driver instead. It's also used for a lot of people that need to get to different types of medical appointments. So these volunteers use their own personal vehicles. We reimburse them for a mileage rate. We give them a startup fee, and they provide those essential rides. Our next core area is self-sufficiency. This is where we have a variety of different educational classes to help people gain the skills and the knowledge that they need to be self-sufficient. We have financial fitness classes and one-to-one coaching that helps people learn more about how to take control of their finances. People with low incomes are the best budgeters in the world because they have a little that they have to work with and they know how to balance their budget. But what we do is we work with them on establishing checking and savings account, gaining a relationship with a local lending institution, and how to make their dollar stretch as far as possible. We also offer a Renting 101 class that helps people know and understand what is required under my lease. What do I look for? How can I be the best renter I can be? And that, of course, is to be able to prevent homelessness. We have a large tax assistance program in which last year we served over 1,000 households in Stearns County where we have volunteer tax preparers that prepare taxes for free. And this is a program where we last year had 5 different sites, one at Catholic Charities, one at St. Cloud Technical and Community College, one at the Salvation Army. We had a site in Cold Spring, and then we have one where we do one-to-one sessions at our Waite Park facility. And then we have our Rebuilding Lives program. This is a program that helps people who have lost the primary wage earner in their house, whether it's due to death, divorce, disability, or some other reason. We provide case management services, training, and support to help them get back into the workforce so they can economically take care of their family. And then the last key area is building stability. So once we help people get to a point where they are stable, how can we move them from the poverty level to where they are economically, financially sound? We have an asset development program called FAME. It's a match savings program that matches on a 3-to-1 basis for 3 main goals: pursue a higher education, start or expand a small business, or purchase a home if you're a first-time home buyer. Last year in Stearns County, we helped 12 households gain some assets. We know the more assets people gain, the more likely they will not move back into poverty. We also have a MURL program, which is a Minnesota Urban Rural and Homesteading program, We currently have 14 homes that TRICAP has sold on a contract for deed in Stearns County. This is a program where it's for people that would not qualify for a conventional home loan. Back in the early 2000s, TRICAP purchased these blighted properties in Stearns County. We rehabbed them, and then we sold them on a contract for deed at 0% interest to a qualifying low-income home buyer. And again, we have 14 households in our portfolio right now where people are successful homeowners today. We also do rehab services through Minnesota Housing Finance. Housing rehab is a need that there just are not enough resources, especially for people that have lower incomes. There are repairs that need to be done on homes. Roofs need to be replaced. Handicapped accessibility. A lot of times it could be furnaces or other housing needs, just like we all have. We facilitate these rehab loans. It's a 10-year forgivable loan through the Minnesota Housing Finance program. And then the last program is the weatherization program, and this is a complementary program to our energy assistance program. So this is for households that qualify for energy assistance. We go in and use local contractors that make the home more energy efficient, and we do that by doing a comprehensive assessment of the home. We do bypass sealing, insulation. Sometimes we replace windows and doors depending on what that need is. But the goal is to tighten up that house and make it more energy efficient and lower their energy bills. So as you can see, that's just a variety of different programs that TRICAP operates in. We currently have 90 employees within our organization. We have an administrative office in Waite Park and 5 transit facilities outside the 5-county area. I'll just stop because I just talked a lot to see if there's any questions about TRICAP's programs or how we complement the human services programs.
Yeah, I'd like to, just commend Lori and her staff for, all her organization does for the residents of Stearns County. And one thing, maybe Lori, if you could mention, I'm a sitting board member on TRICAP, the structure of the TRICAP board, which is kind of unique compared to most.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch. We do have a unique board. So Community Action Agency is required to have what's called a tripartite board of directors. 1/3 public elected officials, 1/3 community representatives, and 1/3 consumers, so people that are eligible and receiving our services. We currently have an 18-member board with 6 from Stearns County, 6 from Benton, and 6 from Sherburne.
Which makes, it's a very interesting makeup of a board because there's such a wide range of discussions that occur at the board meetings because of the uniqueness of everybody's position.
It's bringing the different perspectives from 3 different groups together. It can be a wonderful opportunity and it can be a challenge as well, but it works.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments for Lori? Well, Steve, I appreciate you sitting on that board because it's important, having all these programs in place. And I know of TRICAP, but I didn't know all those things that you did, and it was nice to hear those things today. And then the safety net that you provide for the community, because if it wasn't for that safety net, many folks would be dropping through and then looking for other types of programs for support and other type of assistance. And the good that comes out of that is tremendous. So I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe one other thing, for Lori's group too. It's amazing when you try and understand how the rural aspect of busing, the TRICAP transportation. I mean, it's. I don't know if complex is the right word, but when you listen to how the dispatchers have to get the rides and how this all works, it's just amazing that they get this all done.
It is complex. We are, we're different than Metro Bus in that we don't have fixed routes. We are what's called curb-to-curb service. So anybody who wants to ride our bus calls our dispatch line. They tell us where they need to go, what time they need to be there at, what time they need to be picked up. And then that information gets routed out to the drivers that are out in 5 different counties. Our dispatchers are all located in Wake Park. And it is just amazing how it does work, but it is a complicated system. When you're in greater Minnesota, that route system just does not work in the smaller towns. You have to individualize the transportation services to be effective. If I could also say that one of the unique and wonderful aspects of community action is we're required every 3 years to do a comprehensive needs assessment. And as part of that needs assessment, that is how we do our planning for what community action will do, what will serve. And so for TRICAP, of course, we look at our specific 3-county area. Consistently over the last 10 years, the 5 greatest needs in Stearns County has been the first being affordable and safe housing. The second is access to reliable transportation. The third is energy assistance. And the 4th and 5th together would be access to food and other basic needs. And I have seen that has not changed over the last 10 years when we do this year after year. We're just finalizing our next 3-year process, and so it'll be interesting to see if there's any shifts in that as well. The last document that I did provide too is it's a report on the economic impact that TRICAP makes in the community. So I just talked about all of the people that need our services and how we impact their lives. But another important component to TRICAP is what we also help for the economy. So last year, TRICAP, through the services that we offered, brought back more than $4 million into Stearns County through the various programs. And I won't go through all of those in essence of time, but I'll just give an example. So last year, $1.9 million was paid out to local energy vendors, and this is for Stearns County only, through our energy assistance program. So this isn't just the large Excel and CenterPoint. This is the small local owned oil propane shops in the small communities in Stearns County. $1.5 million in tax returns came back through the people that had their taxes done here in Stearns County, with, of course, the goal of them spending it locally at local businesses. But it's just an example of how TRICAP is truly making an impact on the economy here as well.
Okay. Other questions? If not, thank you very much, Lori.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Happy New Year. Looking for
You
good
too.
things in 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is Human Services. At this time, we'll recess our regular meeting and move on to the Human Services Board.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Melissa Huberty, the Human Services Administrator in Stearns County. I have 15 items on the Human Services consent agenda today, which is items H1 through H15 on pages 107 to 144, and I'm available for questions.
Okay. Okay, any questions on those 15 items? If not, we'll look for a motion to approve all 15 of those items.
So moved.
Commissioner Clark,
Second.
Commissioner Notch, a second. Any discussion on any of those? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. There, on the regular Human Services Board agenda today, there's one item, and I have with me the Community Corrections Director, Becky Bells-Cramlett, and she's here to highlight all the wonderful things that the Community Corrections Division has done this year through the comprehensive plan. So,
Good morning. Thank you,
Good morning,
Melissa.
Becky.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. First of all, I want to start off by thanking Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Notch, and also Commissioner Mergen for your involvement over the years in the Community Corrections Advisory Board. As I tell the board and the Community Corrections Division, I believe we have the best active board in the state of Minnesota.
we do. I can confirm that.
And so very, very proud of that work. Very proud of that work. What we're here today to talk about is, again, highlight some of the areas in the last couple of years of work that we've done in community corrections, but specifically to ask for board approval of our 2020 to 2021 comprehensive plan, and ask for the board to authorize the board chair and Human Services Administrator to sign the grant application agreement so we can get our funding from the state. So specifically talking about packet page 146, on that page it indicates that this is where our every other year biannual plan is required for board approval. I do want to say our Community Corrections Advisory Board, along with all of the staff in Community Corrections, have had much involvement with this plan. We put together a lot of data over the past couple of years and highlight some of the program areas. So with that today, I want to talk about just a couple of the areas over the past couple of years that I'm very, very proud of. One of the things that we've been doing, as you noticed with that award that we received earlier, is being part of working on prevention and really working upstream and being a very collaborative member of a team that's doing excellent action in the community, helping get individuals that are experiencing mental illness in the right area, not into jail, not into the emergency room or detox, but hopefully into the services they need. We are part of that with 2 mental health agents and a supervisor that is very involved in our community action team. And it's a very unique response working with these individuals. The data we're seeing is showing that we're having great reductions in these high costs to the county and to the government. And again, it's saving humans. We're really doing a nice job with these individuals, getting them in the community and productive members of the community. We're also increasing public safety by doing this. I think one of the areas that we focus on in community corrections is public safety, but we can be a big part of that by being preventive and being helpful and being at the table with our social services and our medical provider. One of the other things we've done is we've worked on continuing to integrate services. We've done some combination of adult and juvenile organization within our community corrections division. So our supervisors are all working in all of the areas. We are no longer siloed. I know it's easy to be looking on externally on doing some of the different breakdown of silos, but we needed to do that internally too. So we have supervisors that oversee many different areas, and they can work together and they can collaborate and learn from each other too. So there's not just one person that's a subject matter expert. I want to reference packet page 149, the Crossover Youth Initiative. This has also been very preventative, proactive work where we're reducing duplication of our services. We're trying to find the best fit for a child and really reducing pre-adjudication detention and hopefully maybe engaging child protection, engaging child welfare, and not just the criminal justice system when a child is entering our system. Very impressed with the work we've been doing and really reducing the dual involvement for these kids. I want to talk about resiliency. This has been a goal for our Human Services Department. We've been training all of our Human Services employees to help increase their capacity of resilience. And in turn, this helps the clients that we serve. By us being the healthiest that we can be, this is going to, has already shown with clients that we can help them be healthier and more productive members. Finally, on packet page 150, I want to talk about the work we've been doing with our veterans. We have a Veterans Court protocol where we're doing a better service to these individuals that are entering the criminal justice system. We're working collaboratively with the court system, with the public defenders, with the prosecutors, and with the VA here in town. And I would just want to take a moment to highlight that. And finally, I want to thank everyone in the Community Corrections Division. We've really done a lot of work the last couple of years, and I look forward to the next couple of years coming ahead. Any questions or comments from the board?
Questions for Becky?
It's not so much a question. I'm sure other members might have it. Just want to thank you and your team again, and not just your team, the breaking down the silos, truly the innovation and the yes we can mentality. It's been incredibly impressive really to see what's happening, bringing community partners together, but also within the work that our agents are doing. It's making a huge difference. And I know if Commissioner Merrick was still sitting here in the seat, he would reinforce why this makes Stearns County the best county in the state. I agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to echo those comments. Commissioner Clark, thank you. And also just a thought or a concern is that these proactive programs, it's not what you see, it's what you don't see. And looking forward, if we see reduction in cost, we see reduction in critical activity and crisis and that, let's not forget why we're seeing that, because then it comes to the idea, well, we can cut corners here, we can cut staff here, but it's having those staff and the type of people we have in place and programs we have in place that are actually reducing that. And let's not go backwards in that. So I hope that future boards and staff continue to progress in that manner, so thank you.
Agreed, thank you.
Well, we do have to, a motion to move forward with this grant program, correct?
Yes, we
need
do.
a motion, so.
Yes.
So moved.
Commissioner Clark?
Second.
Commissioner Notch, any more discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No?
Okay, okay. Have a
Thank
good
you.
New Year.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Okay, Board, that ends the first part of our meeting here. If folks want to take a break, we'll take a break and then come back for round two, okay? With that, we'll recess. After, I'm doing code.
Is there a reason you have two gavels?
Yes, there is. This is actually a family gavel, and so it's
Oh,
my last meeting. of the year. I can bring a little
okay. I
family
noticed
gavel.
that you had the smaller
It's
one.
been in the family for decades. I had a previous
Did you just
family
sniff
member
of it?
politician. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was just used for gaveling.
Well, yeah. and tenderizing meat.
So you're back,
We have a gavel at home that actually is plastic, and if you do,
Yeah,
it
you
shoots out
practice
water.
at home.
If I'd known you were looking for alternate gavels, I would have brought it just for fun.
Oh, yeah, well, I could be two-fisted. So we're back with our regular meeting and going to move on with environmental studies. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. We have a single item for you today. Kind of exciting. So Becky and Cole are here to go through that item with you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm Becky Schlorf, Environmental Services Ag and Water Resources Division Supervisor. So this item is a discussion item. No action is required today. Previous action was back in March of 2018. The County Board approved a resolution in support of the One Watershed, One Plan for the Sauk River, and then also Sauk River Watershed, and also approved entering into an agreement to establish a policy committee and technical committees. So on the policy committee has been Commissioner Steve Notch, and on the technical committee has been Cole Lowen of my staff. And that agreement is including the counties of Stearns, Douglas, Meeker, Pope, and Todd counties, as well as the watershed district. And then the soil and water conservation districts, of course, are also partners in that. And so the policy committee is looking to, in January, to start determining the framework for the implementation phase. The committee's been working on the planning phase, and they're asking each member to come back with feedback from their respective boards to make sure that things continue to progress and that feedback has been considered. So there are 3 agreement types. 1 is a memorandum of understanding, 2 is a joint powers collaboration, and 3 is a joint powers entity. And the committee has been leaning towards the joint powers collaboration, which does not create another entity. So with that, I guess I'm going to leave it up to maybe Commissioner Notch to fill in some additional information, or Cole Lowen, and just ask again for some feedback for, I suppose, Commissioner Notch to take back.
Yeah, at our last policy meeting in November, I believe it was, the conversation came up of kind of formalizing, how this One Watershed, One Plan would operate once it's in place and the grant monies come from Bowser. How to decide what projects and how to move forward. And so Julie Blackburn from Respect, gave us these 3 options. The memorandum of understanding is kind of more of just a open-end, almost you could say just a handshake type deal. Anybody could come and go. The collaboration would be a little more organized, but yet not forming a separate government entity like the joint powers entity would create another layer, which, from my recollection, most of the other county board members that attend, are kind of against creating another layer of government. So, that group is leaning more toward the collaboration, and Cole and Becky can probably fill in a little more on the details of that. But it's almost like it'd be more of a formalized, and the last comments or structure ideas were when projects would come forward, we'd have a committee that would review and kind of make recommendations, of how to spend the grant money on which projects. My feeling was, and I guess my personal feeling would be to do the collaboration and not create another entity. And the memorandum of understanding, is probably too loose of a structure to deal with $800,000 worth of grant money, or I think it's $400-some thousand a year. So I'd be more in favor of the collaboration, and maybe Cole or Becky can expound a little more on how they're set up.
Okay, so, morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So basically what you would be looking at if you're doing a joint powers collaboration is you would be entering into what's called a joint powers agreement. So that specific section of Minnesota statute 479 something something is what you would be exercising. To give you an example, most of the One Watershed, One plans that are now online and active are using the joint powers collaborative model. So that's 8 of the 12 are using a JPC. The remaining 4 either are using a joint powers entity or have indicated that they are going to use a joint powers entity. So it's the more favored of the approaches. There have been some One Watershed, One plans that have tried to do this via the memorandum of agreement or that handshake. But what has almost always ended up happening is they evolve into a joint powers collaboration anyways, because it just doesn't function very well without that level of detail structured in the agreement. Anything further on that, I'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions you have. Staff's opinion, and I have reached out to some of the technical staff that I work with on the TAC, is also that a joint powers collaborative seems to be the best approach given the nature of the partnership and what it's trying to accomplish as the plan is currently being developed.
Okay. Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, would you go through, as you see it, what the comparison of the direction that the North Fork one is taking, the One Watershed, One plan that meets down in Litchfield versus the one that Sauk River is taking?
Sure. So I would say that the North Fork was one of the pilot programs. So the North Fork had the benefit and the cost of being a pilot program, and one of those costs was they were one of the ones that initially tried to approach this as a memorandum of agreement, and over time that policy committee has made the decision to turn it into more of a joint powers collaboration. In fact, it probably legally was a joint powers collaboration because when you look at the agreement, they actually reference Minnesota Statute 479 in several places. They're currently developing a revised memorandum of agreement to make that more clear and more effectual. And one of the things that they're currently working on is there's been agreement amongst the policy committee members that they would like to see a unified plan coordinator position established via one of the partners would serve that role, and they would make the decision on, are you going to hire a staff member? Are you going to hire a consultant or some type of arrangement in their office? In order to make that effectual, they are then having to talk about how are we going to fund that position in a fair and equitable manner amongst all the partnership. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case for the SOC. And in fact, they're currently not at that level of conversation at the policy committee on whether they need a plan coordinator or if that can be handled with existing staff capacity who would take on that role and responsibility. Each watershed is different. There are some similarities between the North Fork and the Sauk. They both have altered hydrology issues, which are causing a lot of the impairments they're facing, so they're likely going to be implementing similar activities to try to address those concerns, such as wetland restorations, dealing with tile discharge, things of that nature. How they go about it, though, is very much left up to the locals in those partnerships. How the North Fork decides to handle it is not how the Sauk has to handle it. Those local entities working together cooperatively make that decision. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
So comparing the two, they're taking different routes.
I would say they are going to use the same agreements form, the joint power collaborative model, but the content of that model right now, I would say, is not the same. I do not know if the SOC is going to go a plan coordinator route or if they're going to leave it with the individual members to handle it cooperatively. They do not have to go that route.
I know the last North Fork meeting I attended, this discussion came up, with the coordinator, and I know the North Fork staff is very limited. I think they have 3, the financial
That's
officer, correct. And then what would be your ditch coordinator?
Yeah, so they got their administrator, their fiscal manager, and then a technician.
Yeah, so there would be very limited to try and initiate the projects and get that going besides doing their normal ditch activities, whereas I think the Sauk River watershed is a larger watershed and has more staff. My prediction is they're going to try and run it with the staff they have, but if it gets too technical or complicated, they might have to look at hiring a coordinator. But I can see where in North Fork, where that grouping, has been talking about a coordinator, because I think they have a hard enough time getting done the projects they have going now, much less trying to do the one watershed, one plan.
Or this one watershed, one plan idea, would that take over the watershed district? Because the watershed district has their own taxing authority.
Correct.
So would there be a different funding mechanism here? Or is that taxing authority going to remain? And then above that, there's the one watershed, one plan.
So how it would work if you do the joint powers collaborative model is all the existing entities maintain their roles and responsibilities, their functions. The difference is under a collaborative model, they are agreeing to work together using those responsibilities and authorities in a cooperative manner to accomplish the goals and purposes of the plan. It's left to the locals to decide how that will actually be done, and the agreement helps to flesh that out. So if you create a joint powers entity, that's a different question, because you are establishing a new form of governance structure, and at that point you aren't necessarily getting rid of the other existing governing layers. So you could be just adding another entity on top to organize and develop and execute the plan. Again, the policy committee doesn't feel that that's necessary in the case of the SOC, that there exists enough collaboration amongst the partners, and you have an asset in the sense of you have a unifying watershed district that covers the entire area. Norfolk, for example, doesn't have that.
So you're saying this cooperative plan already exists, or they're already using cooperation?
Yes, to a certain extent, the cooperative model has been active in the SOC. All this agreement would be doing is formalizing that as part of this one watershed, one plan. The level of detail in the content of that agreement is left to the policy committee working with the technical advisory committee on what you are going to potentially be sharing services or focusing on going forward.
Steve?
I think the biggest difference, or maybe what's missing here, is the money that comes forward is, instead of being competitive grant funds, all these watersheds that go one watershed, one plan will get base funding through Bowser. I think Sauk Rivers is 800-some thousand over the next biennium.
Yep, over the next biennium, 833,000.
Yeah, so instead of having to compete with all the other watersheds in the state of Minnesota to get money to do projects, they're going to be allocated so many dollars per year to do projects. So they don't have to write grants and do all this work to get the money. The base funding will be there, and then the additional funding, that would be more of a competitive nature, correct?
It could be competitive nature, it could be the existing taxing authority structure, or any combination thereof.
If I may ask, the additional funding, is that based on particular criterion as far as like impairment or economic impact, or what is the basis for that additional funding?
So the watershed-based funding that Bowser is setting aside for these plans, which is in effect going to function like the Natural Resource Block Grant Program that currently is offered by Bowser, it's going to be based on the amount of private land and the amount of riparian miles, if memory serves me correctly. Bowser did a lot of work over the past couple of years trying to decide what the criteria will be to maintain a fair and equitable distribution of these funds across the state, given that each of these major watersheds are very different from one another. The watersheds up north don't have impairments like the watersheds down south, so that wouldn't necessarily be a fair way to distribute the funds. They're doing more protection activities, as an example. And so where they kind of landed was the amount of private land in combination to the amount of water, basically, that exists in that watershed should be used to determine how much of this base allocation will be given to each of these watersheds going forward.
Yeah, and that's what I have concerns about, is that, we're maybe spending money on areas that maybe that already have protected waters and are secure, and yet the most impaired are not being necessarily addressed. And I would hope we would try to do the better good where we need the most help, but that doesn't sound like it's necessarily the formula. So,
I can't imagine that the workflow in, well, because it really applies to all units of government, is even across the board. Why couldn't watersheds use, what makes me think of this, just got done with the Association of Minnesota Counties Conference, and I know there's a boatload of private consultants out there have various expertise for these programming. Why wouldn't it be possible to do by contract or a case-by-case method instead of adding staff? It would seem to me if you do this with a contract, you don't have that permanent ongoing cost. I guess I'd leave this up for a response to Jeff and Steve, because you guys are way ahead of me in terms of what you know about watersheds. Is that a possible, practical alternative?
Well, if, a little bit I know, and I'm not sure how much Jeff knows on the North Fork with considering hiring the coordinator, which would be all entities involved would contribute some funding toward it.
Mhm.
Like Wright County would be where that person would be employed through.
Okay.
And the other counties that are involved would pay a portion of that person's wages or salary. But, I guess I wasn't in on those discussions because North Fork is ahead of Sauk River. Sauk River is a couple of years behind. So
Mhm.
North Fork's probably going to be ahead of the curve. So that might be a good question, is maybe you hire a project coordinator on a case-by-case basis versus actually, one of the counties having to hire an employee and everybody else, help supplement that staff position.
And
I'm not
Mr.
sure.
Chair, members of the board, at the last technical advisory committee meeting for the North Fork, there was a lengthy discussion on that, and actually the TAC is recommending to the policy committee and to Wright, who's likely going to be the entity that takes on the plan coordinator role, recommending that it be done via a consultant process, not an
There you go.
employee process,
So, yeah,
because it provides them additional flexibility, easier use, and it should, in theory, the TAC believes, lower cost.
Huh? See, they changed my medication right away. Stuff starts happening.
The last meeting I was at, they are now talking about a project coordinator, and which was not in the original, as this was originally presented a couple of years ago. We started working on this.
Okay.
The cost to the counties was supposed to go away, but now it's coming back, and coming back at a higher cost than what we've been contributing. So, and I did tell them at that point I would not be supporting that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting which, how this plays out, being that they've talked about now switching that, so time will tell.
Yeah. And staff and Jeff, Steve, I've been only on the periphery of this, and I appreciate your efforts to try to make it make sense. I understand the effort in trying to be one watershed, one plan, because water runs across all these different jurisdictions, but it's all in one system working together, and that can be very sticky politically. So, yeah.
And practically, the only extensive watershed experience I've ever had was the Middle River, Snake River watershed in northwestern Minnesota. And up there, watersheds are the most important unit of local government. They have tremendous power, tremendous responsibilities. Out in the middle of nowhere, very sophisticated staff, and they operate totally different. So Cole was alluding to the fact that not all watersheds are created equal, and I can certainly appreciate that. From St. Paul, of course, they look the same, but, you know, St. Paul isn't always reality. So, if you're done with him, I got a question for Cole concerning Clearwater watershed. So if somebody wants to explore or wants to do an individual project on a check valve installation, is there an approval process or a permit process that they have to go through with the watershed? Who do they talk to? What's the process? Going from memory, I think you can pull this off.
Yep. So I'm assuming with Clearwater River Watershed District, you're referring to one of the 4 communal sanitary sewer systems they operate. Where they would want to start with talking about potentially installing a check valve on their service line is they would want to start with the district administrator. Name is Rebecca Carlson.
Okay.
Their contact information is on their webpage, crwd.org. That's where I would start if someone was asking me for their contact information.
Okay. What would be involved? Any idea?
So that district historically doesn't do permits, but since you are talking about a service line to a system they own and operate, they will definitely want to be informed and likely just clear with them that they do have that authority to go into their own service line and install a check valve. They probably also want to know where it is in case something is ever going on with that system and they start having concerns about flows or things of that nature. They likely want to know where anything that can interrupt flows is on the system as a whole, so they're aware of it in case they ever need to do a troubleshooting issue.
Hey, you're going to make me sound like Mr. Wizard. Lori Visich from Extension lives on one of those systems and had her basement flood. So she was at the Association of Minnesota Counties Conference, and apparently she doesn't really enjoy cleaning up sewer backups. I just was left with that impression. But thank you. This was a very opportunistic coincidence that you're in front of the board today, and sorry to tie you folks up on that. So, but I couldn't pass it up.
Okay, board members, any other questions or issues about the watershed concerns? Okay, this was just information only, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then that was your only item. You have something else?
I have nothing else unless you have something for me. Thank you.
Board? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to property services.
Another ditch.
Yeah, from one watershed to a ditch, yeah.
Hey, don't sound so excited.
Yeah. Jeff and Chad, welcome this morning.
Yes, welcome.
I'm surprised you're even able to talk. I thought you'd be in mourning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the county board, and the public that may be viewing this meeting. I'm Jeff Johnson, the Property Services Director, and to my right, your left, is Chad Martini, the Land Services Manager. The matter before you this morning is identified as Agenda Item K1 on page 167 of your agenda packet. What we're seeking this morning is your approval to move ahead with an engineering analysis on the condition of a portion of County Ditch 28 that extends from the fish trap on the north side of Two Rivers Lake to Crane Creek. So with that understanding, I will turn it over to Chad, who will offer some information for your consideration.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Chad.
Just some brief history for our viewing public here. County Ditch 28, up by Albany Holding Ford, established in 1906. Been a lot of activity, maybe not necessarily practical field activity, but certainly a lot of information gathering. Most recent history is, of course, the reestablishment of records that we recently completed and sent out statements to the property owners for. Again, a reestablishment of records, essentially, it does a lot of things, but in all practicality, it sets an elevation bottom for what was theoretically as constructed in 1906, which is important per ditch law for when we talk about things like repairs. It's worth noting, again, the role of the DNR as CD 28 is public waters, so the DNR is certainly one of our partners on any activity that might happen in public waters. Two big requirements that the DNR shares with us that they want or need to see when we talk about a public waters permit to enter the system to do any kind of excavation repair work. The first one being a legal as constructed ditch bottom, which of course our reestablishment covers. The second one being the impact that any potential repair might have on the lake. That is something we don't currently have. And something as a drainage authority I'm sure you would be interested in, not necessarily the impact on the lake, but certainly when evaluating the cost of a repair, what is that benefit cost ratio for that system? Quick reestablishment summary. So when we set the legal elevation bottom of the ditch, we're able to compare now what current conditions in 2019 are to what in theory it should be per the 1906 engineering. We know there's up to 3 feet of sediment in portions of the ditch. We know what we don't know is the impact of those deficiencies on the system. It's a river that sometimes extends as wide as 30 feet. The ditch is legally 10 feet in the center of that river. When we talk about what the impact of any deficiencies have on the system, we start to think about, does the benefit of a potential repair equate to a greater cost than that benefit? We want to be stewards of taxpayers' dollars. It makes no sense, and legally I don't even think we're allowed to spend more money on a repair than it would have benefit to the people. It only makes sense. At this point, even with the reestablishment summary and all the information that's given us, we still can't satisfy all the DNR requirements in terms of quantifying what would the impact of a repair be. Would it have any impact? I think it's also worth noting, coordinating with Jeff, county administrator, to the commissioners in the area, I think it's worth noting some of the public feedback. We've recently sent out statements for the $19,000 in costs the system incurred for the reestablishment. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from property owners. We know a majority aren't in favor of their taxes going up. I mean, I think that probably goes without saying. We know a majority.
Was that unanimous, Chad, do you think?
Well, based on the feedback I've gotten recently, yes, but we didn't hear from everybody.
Okay.
We know a majority feel the current determination of who pays, who's included in the system, and who isn't, probably isn't fair. And I would have to agree that they're probably right. It was established in 1906. In 2019, a lot's changed. We know there's several property owners that had some pretty disproportionate bills based on the percentage of their benefit in the system. There was many small bills, but there were several rather large bills, at least proportionally. Unfortunately, a legal redetermination process is probably, well, it really is the only way to update and kind of reset the grid and level the playing field, so to speak, to kind of reassess in 2019 who's benefiting, versus relying on this older information that we're bound by law to follow. So talking about the public feedback, I think when we talk about next steps, it's worth noting that this isn't a public hearing today. I think what we're talking about today has more to do with our legal obligation in maintaining the ditch and how that equates to the costs incurred by the property owners in the system. What we tried to do as staff coordinating with Jeff and Dr. Williams was to come up with the most efficient, cost-effective way to move forward to try to satisfy some of the unknown information we have. Is a repair even warranted? Is there something that we could even do that would have a beneficial impact? And with our vendor partners, we came up with an engineering process that would determine the impact and the impact of the current versus repaired conditions. And that was called a engineering conditions report. Am I correct, Jeff?
That's correct.
So if we move forward with the conditions report, essentially is what that does. It completes a computer model from the lake outlet to the end of the ditch. And with that computer model, now the engineer can start to say, if we take out the fish trap, this is what happens. This is where the water moves. You know, it was here, now it's here. You know, that's how we tangibly see what the benefit would be. If we scoop out 3 feet of sediment over 4,500 feet, this is what happens to the water. You know, we can see those benefits.
Chad, if I
Yes.
may interrupt, you know, I was surprised that in some areas that, yeah, there was 3 feet of sediment.
Mhm.
But then I also, I go back in 1906, when they were engineering that, the method by which they engineered and they actually did the work, they weren't so exact as far as flow, and they weren't so intentional about the impact when they were actually digging that. So, I mean, the fact that you have 3 feet difference in, or of sediment doesn't mean that they dug it down where it was supposed to be, correct?
No, it's a very astute point. You know, the satellites weren't as helpful in 1906 to establish elevations as they are today. Even the method by which they dug, plus it's a natural river, you know, so keep in mind when we reestablish records, what the engineer establishes as that current as constructed in 1906 grade is completely based on science evaluating all the available information. There's nobody left to ask. They're all long since passed. So it's, I don't want to, our engineer friends would be upset if I said it was best guess, but it's really a scientific evaluation of everything we have in the ditch file, all the field notes, all the, you know, we do soil borings, you know, all that goes into a ball, and that's what the engineers get paid, you know, their money to come up with. So the point of is that line that the engineer draws that says that's your legal bottom. It is the legal bottom today. Is it really what they did in 1906? Nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the whole purpose of reestablishing the records, because in 2019, you know, we understand that we have to do something. We can't use what was done in 1906. It just doesn't translate, you know, into how we work in 2019. Am I answering your question,
Yeah,
or am
no,
I just?
that's fine. But the point being, though, is we're not going to go back and it's not going to come down to removing all 3 feet of that sediment when we do a correction. Well,
We certainly don't have to. I mean, we would never dig more than we had to. If we could get the hydrologic benefit that we're looking for, you know, no, there's nothing that says you have to go
that we have
the
to
bottom.
reestablish what we thought was the original bed. We don't have to do that.
No, you're under no legal obligation. Your only legal obligation is to maintain the ditch. And there's broad flexibility for the Drainage Authority in interpreting what that means.
Okay.
Does that
Yep,
help
I'm
you?
fine.
Okay. Again, talking about further engineering, the cost is to look at lake outlet to ditch end, $8,900. Creates a computer model, provides engineer would recommend next steps. Is there a repair that makes a difference? Maybe there's nothing here. Doesn't define a repair plan. It's a first step. I can't say at this point that additional engineering wouldn't be needed. I can't tell you what a total cost of a potential repair might be at this point. Engineers would define a standard estimate of $5 a linear foot. With the target area we're looking at, Jeff and I calculated excavation might cost $22,000, but that doesn't include any additional costs in engineering, DNR requirements. There's a lot of cost unknowns. Moving forward, the conditions report, the engineering would provide answers to all the questions of, is a repair worthwhile, and what is the impact of that repair? It gives us an opportunity to move forward, and if there even is something to move forward with. So at this point, with the information we have from our reestablishment and understanding of our legal obligation to maintain the ditch, based on input from our legal and engineering partners, staff is recommending the Drainage Authority direct staff to complete a conditions report in the amount of $8,900 in vendor cost plus staff time. At this point, I want to make sure Jeff doesn't have anything to fill in on anything I might have glossed over, and certainly any questions from the board at this point for us.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, member of the boards, I think Chad's done good job in providing an overview of the project that's before you. One thing I would add is that the resource that can be taken away from a condition report is that it would become a historical resource that would be essential in our quintile reviews that we'll be doing once every 5 years. It will serve as a benchmark of sorts. And so that will give us a little bit of a foundation to work from, and it's a tool that could be used into perpetuity. So there is some benefit by having a condition report so that we have an understanding about what impacts, if any repairs or replacements or work done on the system would entail.
Questions from commissioners?
My point here is that a reestablishment of benefits would be really nice to have. However, the cost of that is so high.
I have some additional.
And then who pays for that afterwards? It's the people that are now benefited.
The
right?
new benefit.
And some of them wouldn't even be aware that all of a sudden they're going to be benefited where they weren't before, and now they have this large bill. And then one other thing that we've talked about before is there are some that, as you look at this, that are obviously benefited, but yet are not on the, but those people would have the opportunity to petition in.
Correct.
How many have?
To date, no one has sent Stearns County a petition to be included in the ditch. We have asked several. They have declined.
Some that have been quite vocal with the problem, but have not benefited in, but have not asked to be.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And a significant change in all ditch discussions is the definition of cost. Traditionally, the discussion of cost related almost exclusively to construction costs and maintenance costs. The reality is, there was a presentation again at the recent AMC conference on this. The reality is soft costs have just gone through the roof, especially if there's an appeal, and sometimes an appeal of the decision resulting from an appeal. So, there are significant costs in many cases that are not associated with actually turning dirt. So, this just plain is getting to be a tougher and tougher process going forward. So, I don't know. I suppose if this was easy, ordinary people would do it, but we're doing it. So, here we are.
Well, and I think too, you know, the biggest thing is eventually the redetermination of benefits, you know, albeit nobody likes to pay that, but I think the ones that are paying now would probably be more welcoming to pay to get others that they feel should be in that aren't in, because as you stated earlier, 1906 benefited properties is probably way different than 2019 benefited properties. So, you know, yeah, it's a cost, but I would say a lot of them are going to concur. We can see this property should be in, and it's not, and we're paying, and they're benefiting. So down the road, if that should eventually occur, you know, I think you bring in some more of these individuals that probably should be in, would be more fair to the whole ditch system. And, you know, to get them to petition in is probably not going to happen because they know there's costs associated. So, you know, it would end up being the other way around.
There's a certain practicality, as we found, and I know Randy, as a county auditor, has worked with me over the years on trying to get some obvious properties that should be in the system in, and without a full redetermination, it's a completely voluntary process. Redetermination, certainly, if costs continue, if there continues to be expenditures, I mean, I think that's a very relevant part of the equation here. You know, right now there's 3,000 acres in the current benefit. Viewers use $4 as kind of a rough estimate, looking at those 3,000, you're talking about, call it $12,000 in viewer costs. Jeff and I have done an assessment or looked at the appraised value of along in terms of buying the 16.5-foot buffer along the ditch, which is required by law if you do a redetermination. Excuse me. That puts you at another roughly $27,000. So you're looking at $40,000 roughly for redetermination at 3,000 acres. It's certainly not hard to imagine the benefit tripling if there were redetermination, if not more. I can't answer off the top of my head if the cost of the redetermination are paid by the final result. So in that case, if you triple the acres, it puts you more in that $65,000 range for the viewing cost and damages to properties to buy that buffer. So it's certainly not something to enter lightly, but at the same token, currently based on the 1906 determination, every dollar spent on the ditch certainly adds that level of frustration that this just isn't right.
Andy?
I think the redetermination of benefits is something that can be talked about, but it might be a little bit early. I think after you have this engineering report, you'll have an idea if doing repairs makes sense and a possible path forward. So at that point, it might be a better discussion to have.
That's a good point.
Right. Chad, on page 168, I don't know if we can put that up. There's a map there. And the green area highlighted there.
Yes.
Okay, that green area, is that the benefited area?
That is the benefit.
Why is it, okay, that's why I question.
There's the obvious reason.
Yeah, that, I look to the left side of that and I see some hatched out areas, but then a great amount of land between that and the lake and.
Yeah, there's holes.
Yeah. But also is that area to the left on the far side, on the edge, that's a benefited area?
Over here?
Yeah.
Different ditch.
Oh, okay.
Just like County Ditch 13 is a different system
okay.
as well.
All right. I was wondering if that was included because, on that, okay, that's actually in a different ditch. Okay.
I mean, just some light evaluation with the engineers off the record shows that a big part of what probably I could predict becomes the new benefit if there was a redetermination is a huge chunk of what used to be the Two Rivers watershed.
Okay.
And Chad, part of the redeterminations might include a good portion of the city of Albany.
It's very difficult for me to think that Albany does not become part of the benefit for CD28 because of their stormwater feeding into the river.
Well, and I think you're at one point now, this report will give you some information, but if you do redetermination of benefits, that also brings probably in Albany, they may have more demands than you're seeing right now once that happens. So, you're escalating things as you go down the road here, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the staff's recommendation to get the engineering analysis completed.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Steve, second by Jeff. Any further discussion on this? Appreciate your efforts.
Yeah,
All those
don't want to pass up an opportunity to make friends.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank
you. Yeah, thanks. Always controversial.
Oh, boy.
I wonder who'll chair that.
Huh?
I wonder who's going to chair that, chair that dilemma. Good morning, Marlis. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Marlis Tanner, Office Service Supervisor, and I'm here today to walk the board through the boards and committees appointment worksheet. If it meets the board's approval, I'll walk you through the entire worksheet, packet pages 170 to 177, entertaining a single motion at the end to approve all appointments.
Okay.
All right.
You going to be ready to march here?
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Ready on the right, ready on the left.
Okay, sounds great. On the worksheet, those members who are interested and eligible for reappointment are noted with a single asterisk, and those who have either reached term limits or are no longer able to continue to serve are listed with a double asterisk. We'll begin with the Environmental Services Boards and Committees, first of which is the Board of Adjustment. This year's the Planning Commission representative on the Board of Adjustment rotates. 2020 would be Sean Blackburn. Interested, eligible, and recommended for reappointment from District 5 is Dave Gamrad. Moving on to the Aquatic Invasive Species Awards Panel, currently Commissioner Clark, along with Cole Lowen and Greg Berg from SWCD. Delinquent Refuse Account Appeals Panel, currently Commissioner Clark with Commissioner Notch as the alternate, Tim Oswald, Troy Freihammer, an Environmental Specialist alternate, Paula Sexton as the non-voting liaison, and the business representative recruitment is ongoing. The Feedlot Review Committee, staff on this committee rotate annually. In 2020, it would be Amber Melke with Shelby Richard Hoffman as the alternate, Bethy Jo Jutton as the second alternate. Interested and eligible for reappointment is Dale Hegland as the county resident representative, the township officer representative, which is currently James Weller, Nate Hilla from SWCD with Dennis Fuchs as the alternate, Brenda Postels from Extension with Emily Wilmus as the alternate, Municipal League representative, which is currently James Hemish, and that concludes the Feedlot Review Committee. Moving along to the Planning Commission, currently Commissioner Persky with Commissioner Mergen as the alternate. Interested, eligible, and recommended for reappointment from District 5 is Sean Blackburn, and from District 4, Kenneth Mossman. On the next page of the worksheet, we have the Plating Committee, currently Jeff Miller with Mike Decker as the alternate, Greg Berg, Wayne Simbalek as the alternate, Ryan Hennon, Steve Halthouse as an alternate, the current Planning Commission representative to be determined, that also rotates, Jennifer Buckentine and Heidi Winskowski as the alternate. Wetland Rules Committee, currently Commissioner Notch with Commissioner Mergen as the alternate. The staff on that committee also rotates, so this year it would be Cole Lowen with Greg Berg as the alternate and Jennifer Kaminsky as the second alternate. Greg Berg, Dennis Fuchs as the alternate, Matt Zinio, and Jody Tyke as the alternate. The next committee is the Wetland Appeals Panel, currently Commissioners Mergen, Lensmeyer with Commissioner Notch as the alternate, and Scott Henderson. The last committee under Environmental Services is the Environmental Services Fee Appeals Panel, currently Commissioner Clark, Jeff Johnson, Steve Holthouse, Troy Freihammer, Tim Oswald, Paula Sexton, and a business representative recruitment ongoing. That takes us to the Extension Boards and Committees, the first of which is the Dairy Advisory Committee, currently Commissioners Notch and Clark. Interested and eligible recommended for reappointment are Stephen Peterson and Ben Shermers, with recruitment ongoing for an agribusiness representative and a producer representative. Also under Extension is the Extension Committee, currently Commissioners Notch and Mergen, as well as Randy Schreifels. Interested, eligible, and recommended for reappointment from District 2 is Glenn Lauer. That takes us to the Highway Boards and Committees, first of which is the Planning Commission. And I apologize, the worksheet reflects 3 commissioners. I have learned that the structure of that committee was changed in the course of last year. And that should read Commissioner Persky as the representative and Commissioner Lensmeyer as the alternate. There is only one representative and one alternate.
Marlis, that's correct. And they gave that as, it's now going to just be called the Policy Board.
Okay,
So-
thank you. I'll change that. And does the executive board still exist,
No,
Commissioner Persky?
no, the executive board does no longer exist as, and so it's, been pared down to the one entity, and it's going to be called the Policy Board, and that's representatives from each of the local communities, and then each of the 3 counties, and then as well as St. Cloud having a number of voting members. So,
Thank you. I'll update the worksheet to reflect that.
Joe is the only commissioner on there now?
Correct, and Commissioner Lensmeyer is the alternate. Does the APO Tech Advisory Committee still exist?
yes, it does.
Okay, so we'll move on to that, and that is currently Jody Tyke. A Region 7W Transportation Committee, currently Commissioner Persky, and the Highway 23 Coalition, also Commissioner Persky. Under Human Resources, we have the Personnel Board of Appeals, Tom Stock and Diane Swenson. The Human Services Board, of course, is all county commissioners. Moving on to the next page of the worksheet, we have the Human Services Advisory Committee, currently Commissioner Clark. Nancy Pitts has reached term limits. Recommended to replace her as the service representative is Kelly Martini. Interested, eligible, and recommended for reappointment are Ann Buckfold and Jama Al-Ahmad. That takes us to the Minnesota Community Health Advisory Committee, which I've learned has actually been renamed or has a different name. It's the State Community Health Services Advisory Committee, or short name SHAC. Currently Commissioner Notch, and with Commissioner Clark as the alternate. Regional Emergency Medical Services, Commissioner Clark with Commissioner Notch as the alternate, and Renee Frowndienst. Community Corrections Advisory Board, currently Commissioner Clark with Commissioner Notch as the alternate. The District 5 vacancy, an applicant recommended by Commissioner Notch to fill that slot is Marlene Oddie. And interested and eligible, recommended for reappointment from District 1 is Danielle Bunting. Joyce Gherkin is also recommended, Josh Kaganiter, Sarah Gibson, and Sarah Gibson. That takes us to the Family Services Collaborative Joint Powers Board. Commissioners Mergen and Notch with Commissioner Persky as the alternate. The Coalition Advancing Healthy Families Joint Powers Board, currently Commissioner Clark with Commissioner Notch as the alternate. The SHIP Community Leadership Team, Commissioner Clark. And that takes us to the park committees. First of which is the Park Commission, currently Commissioner Persky. The District 3 representative reached term limits. After reviewing the applications received, Commissioner Mergen is recommending Orville Willenbring to fill that slot. And then the Planning Commission representative to be named. Parkland Dedication Fee Committee, currently Commissioners Persky and Mergen, the Park Director, the Environmental Services Director, and a staff person from the County Attorney's Office. Most of the watershed appointments occur throughout the year. We do, however, have commissioner appointments. The Sauk River Watershed District, currently Commissioner Notch. The North Fork Crow River Watershed District, also Commissioner Notch. The West Central Minnesota County Watershed Joint Powers Board, Commissioner Notch with Commissioner Lensmeyer as the alternate. And lastly, the Crow River Joint Powers Board, currently Commissioner Mergen with Commissioner Notch as the alternate. The Noxious Weeds Appeal Committee is appointed by resolution per Minnesota statute and was on today's consent agenda. And the board chair is always the first representative, which will next year likely be Commissioner Lensmeyer. Non-departmental, that takes us to the AMC delegates, all commissioners, the county administrator, auditor treasurer, and human services administrator. Career Solutions Joint Powers Board, Commissioners Mergen and Lensmeyer. The Central Minnesota Council on Aging, Commissioners Clark and Lensmeyer. The Central Minnesota Economic Development 7W District Board, Commissioner Persky and Commissioner Lensmeyer. The Community Adult Mental Health Initiative Joint Powers Board, Commissioner Notch and Melissa Huberty. Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, currently Commissioners Notch and Clark with Commissioner Persky as the alternate. Michael Williams, Steve Hammes, Steve Soika, John Lenz as an alternate, Mark Maslin-Kowski, Jeff Oxton, Blair Anderson, Janelle Kendall, Oli Tetvin, Justin Lyson, Michael Lieberg, Judge Davik Helfen, Becky Bales Cramlett, George Locke, Rex Tucker, Shannon Abenson, James Ilias, Melissa Huberty, Renee Frowndienst, Julie Ellis, Jim Steve as an alternate, Richard Lee, Judge Hennessy, and Renee Courtney. The Emergency Services Board is currently Commissioner Lensmeyer with Commissioner Notch as the alternate. Emergency Services Board Users Committee, Aaron Haushauer, I'm sorry, that should be Aaron Tufty, Bob Dickhouse, James Hughes, Kristen Lahr, and Paul McIntyre. That takes us to the Great River Regional Library Board, currently Commissioner Lensmeyer. The vacancy this year is in the 3rd District. Fran Ramler had reached term limits. Recommended for appointment by Commissioner Mergen is George Fiddler. History Museum Board, currently Commissioner Mergen. Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board, Commissioner Mergen, with recruitment ongoing for the District 2 vacancy. Law Library, Commissioner Lensmeyer. Minnesota Intercounty Association, currently Commissioners Clark and Lensmeyer, with Commissioner Mergen as the alternate. Minnesota Counties Computer Cooperative, Randy Schreifel as the delegate and Jeff Johnson as the alternate. Painesville Airport Zoning Board, Shelley Benson and Jennifer Buckentine. Region 7W SEDS Strategy Committee, Michael Williams. Region 7W Community Economic Development Joint Powers Board, Commissioner Lensmeyer and Commissioner Persky. Regional Rail Authority, Commissioners Clark, Lensmeyer, and Notch. Sauk Center Joint Airport Zoning Board, Shelley Benson and Heidi Winskowski. St. Cloud Airport Advisory Committee, Commissioners Lensmeyer and Clark. Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation, Commissioner Lensmeyer with Commissioner Clark as the alternate. St. Cloud Area Joint Planning District Board, Commissioner Mergen with Commissioner Persky as the alternate. Taking us to the last page of the worksheet, the St. Cloud, Benton, Sherburne, Stearns Joint Airport Zoning Board, currently Commissioners Lensmeyer and Clark. Tax Abatement Committee, Commissioner Notch with Commissioner Mergen as the alternate. Michael Williams, Randy Schreifels, Neil Fortier, Jeff Johnson. And lastly, we have the Tri-County Solid Waste Management Commission, Commissioners Mergen, Clark, Persky, and Lensmeyer, with Commissioner Notch and Michael Williams as alternates. That concludes the appointment, the recommendations for appointment on the worksheet.
Marla, it's just a question maybe on page 3 with the Highway 23 Coalition. Would there be any benefit to having an alternate?
No, that would be good, quite good, yeah. Absolutely.
Because I think
Yes.
Jeff initially was on there, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd want to be an
Jeff, would you
alternate.
do that?
I can be the
Great.
alternate, certainly.
Okay. I will add Commissioner Mergen as an alternate for the Highway 23 Coalition.
Mr. Chair and Marlis, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, and maybe Melissa might be able to help. Didn't we add someone from Centricare in the last year? And I don't think they're on this list necessarily, so we might want to follow up on that. But,
Okay, thank you. I will do that.
Yeah.
Where are you looking?
it's page 6, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee. I think we invited Centricare to that committee, and I don't think their representative is on here, so. Unless I'm thinking about something else. Yeah.
Thank you.
And maybe just one more clarification. On page 1 under Planning Commission, Sean Blackburn, he would be District 2, not District 5, right?
Okay, thank you. I'll correct that. Any other additions or corrections?
Well, I'd move the current slate, you don't have a comment afterwards.
A second.
Motion and a second to approve the appointed positions. Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
Yeah, I'll give you both sides of the argument of what I'll bring up. Way back when, we used to, county board people used to rotate through the various committees. Over time, what's happened is we've got away from that, and there's a strong tendency to reappoint us to the committees that we served on in the past. The argument, on one hand, for the rotation through the various committees is so that you learn a little bit about what every committee does in a little more detail. The argument against it is that if you continue to serve on the individual committees over a period of time, you develop if you stay awake at all, you'll develop a genuine expertise in that particular area. Is there a preference of one way or another? I don't think there's a preference, but just understand the benefit. If at some time in the future, this board or future board would want to change a model, that's the discussion that would take place. Just wanted to point that out. Yeah, this is as smooth as this ever goes. This, back in the day, it was way more contentious. I guess that's as polite as I can state it. But anyway, hold that thought. You may be part of that discussion in the future.
Maybe the question should be, does anybody want to be on a different one, or trade any, or?
Yeah, I would think so too. If there's anybody that protects, has a passion, if somebody wants to be the alternate on noxious weeds, they can take that from me.
I was going to say, there's a couple of these that don't meet very often.
Not until they legalize marijuana.
Well, I certainly think that rotating at some point would be good as the person who's been on it for 1 year. I think we do so many interesting things that it makes some sense at some point in time, but I also really appreciate the work that the people on the ones that I'm at least representing us on. I've also kind of wondered if there's ever been, any kind of communication really back to each other about some of the things going on. I mean, obviously, if we're voting on something in front of us, but would certainly be interested if there's something that's helpful to communicate without necessarily making our meetings a lot longer.
A commissioner who shall remain nameless a couple years ago brought forth, we were looking for areas to cut funding, and he brought forth a list of appropriate things that he felt appropriate for consideration for doing that, and it just happened to be all the areas where he didn't serve on the committee. So I guess if he wasn't on it, they didn't matter. So it was kind of once I figured out the game, it was kind of a comical observation, but oh well. I digress. It happens almost every meeting.
Maybe just a question or something to throw out too, because back in the day when I first got on, used to be 2 of us on the TRICAP board, and I'm not sure if that's the only board that's like not listed on here, because the groundwork on that one I think has changed too. It's kind of evolved where it just has to be elected officials. So some of the other counties, either have like a mayor from a city or somebody like that on. Is it noteworthy to just have it on the last page that there's a board member on TRICAP in case, let's say I'm termed out on there and I bring it to this board, if anybody wants to apply, that it's available? Or if you don't feel it's necessary, that's fine too.
I was actually kind of wondering something similar. I mean, it's a really important organization.
And I don't know if that's the only one.
And honestly, having run the statewide association, I personally have concerns about if it was a mayor, because there's not a lot that a mayor is going to be able to do that really impacts people's lives.
And the mayor's the county commissioner now, I believe.
Yes, and then she couldn't be on it, so it is one that's, I don't know if there are other ones like that or not, but it's probably good if people, we used to have somebody,
I think we have a list on the website of other
And
committees,
maybe
boards, and
that's probably
commissions.
good enough,
One.
because I was thinking there's other committees and stuff that we're involved with that aren't on this list.
I know
but-
TRICAP was previously on the worksheet and then removed.
Right. Because we
Yeah.
thought I was going to be going on there.
Which would be
kind of
fine, because, if I get to the end of my term, or where I'm termed out, I can bring it forward, or, it would be, listed as an opening.
Or post-election.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm on Human Trafficking Board. I work with them, but I'm not listed, and I don't think we have an official capacity for an appointment there, but, I would hope that we'd maybe keep somebody on there, as well as Wacosa Board. It doesn't have to be, I believe, a county commissioner, but, I took that off from Dwayne, so.
And also Ricori Trails.
Yeah.
Oh, so
There are a lot of
just
those.
Leave it then.
I'll provide board members with a list of those other boards and committees for your review, and we can keep those updated as well to ensure we keep them updated.
Okay.
Well, if they're not on the list and you're going to know about them, maybe we should make you administrator. That's pretty good.
I'll digress and remind the viewing public that while there's a strong push for recruitment in October and November, that we do accept applications throughout the year, and I would encourage people who are interested in service to check them out on our website, stearnscountymn.gov.
Yes, thank you, Marla. We appreciate, the community input and those that want to serve.
Yeah.
And many of those people do that with a passion, so it's good to see that.
Great, all right.
Say, Joe,
Yeah.
I don't know if they necessarily need to be on the sheet, but if you're serving on a board through your county capacity, that should be noted somewhere, so if there's expenses, that we can pay those mileage and different things, unless you're getting reimbursed by that organization, but it's probably not bad to have that known somewhere.
And again, I will generate those and ensure they're emailed to you to check.
Okay.
Also anticipated changes potential changes in the near future, depending upon the decisions that are made by not just ourselves, but are also, nearby counties relative to the airport. Those airport affiliated committees would probably be significantly restructured in terms of not just in terms of people, but also in terms of function. So it's a thought you can hold.
Okay. All right. I don't think we have taken the vote, though, so I will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Horse is dead.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for all that work.
You're very welcome.
You've done good.
Okay. Next on the agenda, I do see we're a little bit behind time, so we do have a break scheduled in there. Or do we want to take that break?
I could see a break.
Okay, we'll
I'm
take a
not-
quick break then
I'm
and be
not
back
paying
shortly.
you.
Another hour before we get one of those.
A lot of them are doing.
We are back
It's
from
just
our break.
cost of living.
Next item we have on the agenda is continuation with administration, I believe. Mike, you're on.
The next item is you establishing your salary for 2020. You do that on an annual basis, and you need to do that, if you're going to make any changes particularly, you need to do that before the new year begins. So this would be your last opportunity to do that. And Mr. Hammes has gathered some information for you, and he can certainly answer any questions if you have them, but also included is a blank resolution for you to adopt.
Okay. Board members, we have before us a summary of the area counties, similar sized counties, as far as the pay salaries are for the commissioners. And I believe a recommendation that's there. Correct?
I think some documents might have been missed. Was there something missing in the packet? And so the paper copies here should be complete, but there's just some comparison data there with a number of counties, and then a spreadsheet or table there that shows your current salary of $37,479, and then what various percentage increases would mean if you chose to do that type of an increase, and then a historical view of commissioner salaries. So.
I would move that we leave the salaries as they currently are.
I'll second that with a question or comment or.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to leave the salaries where they are.
Would there be any way to, whether it's the ones that are similar in size to us or the larger group, where you'd put on what they also each get per diem? Besides, what's listed on here?
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. Steve Hammes, Assistant Administrator. I've typically left off the per diems because, again, depending on the county and the per diem rate, and each commissioner goes to different sets of meetings, and so it can have a very widely range in what the per diems are. Typically, when I have conversations with other counties, they speak to per diems that can range from $2,000 to $20,000, per commissioner per county. So I typically like to use a ballpark of, $10,000 appears to be, but it's not anything that I would, it's apples to kumquats because it's very different, and so it's not something I like to put on a table that says this is a hard and fast number.
Well, it'd be more, I was looking at more of what per diem is. Is it $50, $10?
And that
$60?
also varies depending, again,
Okay.
on what they, some counties have one flat number, and some counties it depends on what type of committee they're serving on as
Oh.
well.
Okay.
So it's,
And some counties have expense allowances, and
That's what
so-
this one is here. for
Yeah,
instance.
so there's various ways to skin the cat. The reality is, there's a number, Benton County, for example, has a lower salary, but in terms, when you add back in the per diems, well, their total compensation is much higher than ours. Well, we'll see where Jeff's motion goes, but if it's defeated, I'm certainly going to make a motion for an increase.
Can I ask another question? So I know on the front page, you've got listed that only Wright County, that except for Wright County, the rest are reporting per diems. How about on the other page, too?
on the other page of the surrounding counties, again, with the exception of Wright, they were all, was reporting that they had per diems.
And then can you also remind us what were the salary increases for staff this year?
The grid adjustment is 3% for 2020.
So then Wright County, when you say doesn't report, doesn't have per diems?
They do not have per diems.
Okay.
They followed us a couple of years ago.
Okay, thanks.
I was having a discussion with Dr. Williams this morning, and about it costs the taxpayers actually for each commissioner, when you put everything in there, more than $91,000 per year. as we went through all of the different things that are involved. And that was off of some information that they had provided. And maybe you want to just address some of the things that are in there.
Yeah, Commissioner Mergen, you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Romero, we're looking at the total Board of Commissioners budget. So it includes the wages and benefits and conferences and travel and those kinds of things, but also includes some other things in the departmental budget. For example, AMC and NACO dues.
The MICA dues would be in there as
MICA
well.
dues.
But those wouldn't be
are-
direct compensation.
No,
No,
but-
so
and-
so that's just part of
Of
the
any
budget.
kind of compensation.
Correct, and also the lobbying costs, so the David Church bill is in the commissioner's budget as well, and that's a large item.
You know, and I just always feel that if we're here for the money, then we're here for the wrong reasons. That's my point.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I call the question.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Roll call.
Commissioner Notch.
Aye.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
Nay.
Commissioner Mergen.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
No.
Commissioner Bursky.
Aye.
Passes 3-2.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I think it would be really helpful for next year if we could get some more information. I hate to call it the level of a study, but I appreciate Polk County being on here, but their population is significantly smaller, and their taxpayers are having to pay us a significantly higher rate, too. We are pretty out of sync with any counties anywhere near our size, and many a lot smaller than ours. I certainly agree with Commissioner Mergen. My family would say that the public service that I've done, that we've done, has been a pretty big financial sacrifice for our family. And putting us aside, because we are fine, it is much more challenging at times to get an array of people to participate and step forward to be elected officials. And the type of professionalism that is expected at this point is relatively high. So just would really, I think it's important. I think it also perhaps sends the wrong signal about what we expect of our staff too, if we're not doing that. Now, having said that, the legislature for many years, some of you have heard me say this, didn't do any kind of increases, in part because the changes took effect after an election, and it took a constitutional amendment because nobody would vote. They voted against interest. They wouldn't ever vote for anything that looked like an increase that could have made it. So you didn't have to either be retired or independently of means or very young to come forward and serve. And I think it's appropriate that we really take a hard look at this as we move forward, because eventually we will not be able to ever do it because we'll be so far out of sync.
Okay, I appreciate that opinion. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, if not, we'll move on. Budget and levy.
Well, Mr. Chair, the action before you today is to adopt the 2020 budget and levy, and the resolution that you're being asked to adopt includes the same budget that we presented at the Truth in Taxation hearing. The numbers are slightly different because while we reported that we would have that we were adding, if you remember, the contracted deputies, those numbers weren't in the totals, but they are now in the totals, and I included them in all the summary documentation that was provided to you. So you have a budget with expenditures that increase a little over 3%, revenues increasing a little over 5%, the tax levy changing by 2.89%. That's and the tax rate actually going down by 2.2%. So the tax levy would be adopted with the resolution is $82,797,000.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion on that levy?
I'd move a levy as proposed.
Second.
Motion and a second on the levy and budget? Jeff?
Oh, I'm not going to be supporting it, reasons that were stated earlier previously, but I just was going through these letters that we got from the public, Truth in Taxation. This one, tax has gone up 43% as a single retired person. How am I supposed to absorb this? And I know that we were told that all of these people were contacted and explained to them and they understood that. But did anybody meet with these people and show them where they're supposed to reduce their budget? Here's one, adds more stress than I can't afford health insurance, barely make enough to make the mortgage payment. And you go on, and then here's one, 17.9%. And then I started looking at the ones that provided their tax statement, not only the Stearns County part as to how much that went up. Then I started looking at the special taxing districts. This one went up 51%. Here's one, 13.9%, 48% for the special taxing districts. And there was one more in here, I think it was somewhere around that 46%, those special taxing districts. And Stearns County is part of that too, but they're not broken down at this point yet, but some of those things are out of hand. Those are my comments.
Mr. Nachi?
But Commissioner Mergen, some, like the high one at 53%, that wasn't just, that was their total tax bill.
Correct. I think there's 3 different ones in there at least that involves.
School
And
levies.
it's not broken, no, school levy isn't in there, isn't in the special taxing district. They're on their own. But, yeah, there are at least the watershed, and there are 3 different things that are in there, I think.
Yeah, there could be a number of special task
Yeah.
districts. The one
And-
that you guys are a part of is the Regional Rail Authority, which I believe that levy went down.
That levy actually went down.
That means other ones went up more.
I just want to make sure you're not taking responsibility for other entities' levies, because that's not, there's nothing you
Well,
can do about that.
you know,
Just
the
because
one-
we send the bill out, that's
Right.
not our responsibility.
But I know some of them are, like HRA, we pass here, and so on.
Yeah.
No, Randy, I agree, you oftentimes take flack for other,
Right.
for cities and school districts when it is not the county. And
Well,
Jeff, I can,
And some of those, as you remember, we did talk with the people that, and mostly those were, I think they were all, mostly due to assessments, their property assessments going up. So we did visit with them either when they came in that night or when they sent the email, and that's where we reported that that people understood how that was happening.
But they understand, but were they told where they should reduce their budget?
Randy, let me just say this. Jeff, I understand your concerns, and I appreciate that. I think we do the best job we can as far as being, frugal, if I may say, or at least managing our budget appropriately. But I also take a look at the award we just won, and that tells me that, I think we do quite a job for the people of this county. And I take a look at public safety, even and the presentation from TRICAP and parks and the quality of life we have here in Stearns County. And that doesn't happen without a commitment and a budget put together. So I am quite okay with the budget where it is. Not that I could micromanage maybe and find ways, I guess, in my opinion, that would save some dollars. But, I trust staff in the decisions that they made and hope they will be, spending appropriately and cut corners where they can without cutting with the quality of life. So, Randy, you had something?
I'm going to mention that all the emails and all the comments we received have been, we've talked to the people. So everybody has been contacted that we've received comments from. So, and then if you've seen, I think generally the large increases, somebody put an addition on or finished a basement or something like that.
So oftentimes it's increased value of the property.
Exactly.
Okay.
But, you brought up the employees, and I've got statistics all the way back to 1996, so I go back and refer to those. And the one item I probably get the most calls about are roads. out in my district. And in 1996, the highway department had 62.3 employees. Now they have 60.5. Actually, less employees than in 1996, and I get the most calls there. And, you know, we've got some departments that have increased by almost 3 times the amount of employees.
We may contract out more on that now than we did then.
Yeah. But anyway, just the point, that's, I mean, that's 20-some years ago, and they have less employees.
And I would say too, on your highway, you know, our miles of road doesn't change like mandates for other services, especially on the human service side. So, you know, I don't know if we can make the fair comparison, you know, to that division versus, you know, some of the other divisions either.
Yeah, but then again, we also have some of the things that have changed. We got less roads that we're using a blade on, which requires less maintenance. We've got probably larger mowers. When we're mowing ditches, it takes less time. The plows are better, getting more snow done. I think we've done some advancements. I think we do a pretty good job in transportation as far as being across the county, making sure people can get to work and get to school, and general public safety. So I applaud transportation for the efforts that they've actually made.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
just to reinforce what Steve just brought up, there are those unfunded mandates that we don't have any choice about, and certainly really impact people's lives, but whether it's commitments or out-of-home placements or dealing with a vulnerable adult, those costs, the cost shifts to us have been significant, and that's where I think some of the innovation we were hearing about earlier is just so important, because our staff and our community partners are looking at ways to improve people's lives while we're bringing the cost down. At the same time, those are real costs, or again, DHS trying to shift back to us some costs that we don't think we should be the ones paying for. So hopefully our residents understand that we are working hard to be together good stewards of resources, and don't take, speaking for myself, any changes that are upwards lightly, but we are required to do these things. And I think we also hopefully have people being glad for the type of quality of life that we're helping to impact, as well as some of the burden that goes with that.
Okay.
And I was just going to make one other comment or point too. You know, sitting on the Stearns Electric board, for a number of years now, one of the things that the board the organization prided itself on is the number of employees per member. But, as an organization grows, in the back of our minds, everybody's like, well, how long can we keep doing this? You don't want to get to that point where all of a sudden it flips the other way and now it's costing you more. So you get to that point too where you try and, you always try and be the best at what you can be, but at some point, you have to make incremental steps and changes in order to not all of a sudden fall behind either.
Or the flip, certainly you probably have heard some other people say this too. We talk about doing more with less. Eventually you have to do less with less. The challenge for us is when we are told you don't have a choice, you have to do these things, then we have to. So I think, like you said, there's that balance here. And I think that the budget that staff has put in front of us really tries to do that.
Okay. Commissioner Lenzmeyer, you've been here the longest, you've been the quietest.
I've heard these discussions before.
I thought you were going to give me
just a few times.
This is your one-liner, right?
I've heard the process back and forth and justification and ramification. I'm all for cutting the budget, okay? With maybe the exception of Terrell. If you really want to do that, you've been here long enough to understand the process. And the notion that you're going to expect staff to come forth with ideas without an order from the board is unrealistic. It's a board job to point where they want the spending level on any particular area to be. Your department heads are less likely to do that unless so instructed, because it gives them the opportunity to create ill will with other department heads. Well, Some department heads are a little more immune to that, but the reality is that's a position you put them in. If you want cuts, say, you make the call where and how the cuts should be, and if you can find two buddies on the board, they'll happen. Short of that, getting an annual lecture about the same stuff without any ideas coming forward on where to do this and how to do this when you've been around long enough to see how the world goes around. Maybe this is what you need as your own personal therapy session. My suggestion would be, rather than putting your colleagues through this, go buy yourself a dog.
Anyone else? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Do you have that, Randy?
I do.
Okay.
You're going to say the horses.
All right.
Yeah, the horses,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. That brings us down to the last item we have here, issues by commissioner. Randy, do you have
I
anything?
don't have anything.
The only thing is, I'll be attending the 4-H banquet in Albany on December 28th, I believe, at Shady's Events. Is it? It's Saturday. Saturday evening. Is it 28th? I believe so.
Okay. Week from Saturday.
Yeah, week from this Saturday.
Yep, I am too. I should have been going to that right along. I loved 4-H back in the day. They did a lot for me.
Otherwise, wish everybody either Merry Christmas or Happy
Oh, yeah.
Holidays and Happy
Yeah.
New Year.
Yeah, this will be a fun holiday.
Okay. Commissioner Lenzmeyer, do you have anything?
No, they changed my medication, otherwise it'd have been worse.
I couldn't tell. Commissioner Mergen?
I have nothing.
Nothing. Commissioner Clark?
Just want to also acknowledge our award for the MCIT
Yeah.
County of the Year Award. I'm sure that you probably were about to, so you could certainly say more. It's a very big deal. Really appreciate, again, everything our staff is doing towards that front. I just wish 4-H would stop having these on holiday weekends.
Yeah.
Like Commissioner Lenzmeyer, I got a lot out of 4-H as well, and trying to figure out if I can still be getting there. There was one other good thing that was coming up, but it's gone out of my brain, so
Okay.
get it.
Mike?
I just received this morning from Julie Ring, the Executive Director of AMC, another request to not pay the clawback that the Department of Human Services is asking for because the AMC board apparently passed a resolution. So I don't, unless we would hear differently from the board, we won't be paying that bill when it comes. I don't have anything else.
Okay.
I remembered what I was going to say. I'm not sure if everybody's gotten a chance to go visit the communications center over at our law enforcement center. I know, Lee, you got a chance to somewhat recently. Dispatch, I got a chance to do that very recently. It ended up being on I think a day that was pretty challenging for a number of people, but boy, you get a wonderful opportunity to see the full array of communications that our staff and dispatching are dealing with. So highly recommend it, and I look forward to coming back again. So thank you again.
Okay.
And I did send you some information on the executive order about the refugee resettlement over the weekend, just to hopefully answer some questions if there are any. And I have another document here from Lutheran Social Services if you're interested in documenting a little bit about the most recent past of the refugees that have been placed here, sort of how many and the demographics of that and that kind of thing too. I have talked to the state director. Now her name has escaped me. Anyway, and she would be willing to come to our board meeting, a board meeting in January if we have further questions about the executive order and the whole program.
Okay. And of course, this was rather, surprising, and the way it evolved, first came to me on December 3rd, I think it was, that I first saw, the implications about what we might be doing, and yet I think some of the questions are unanswered too about what it means as far as one county saying, yeah, they'll receive refugees, another county saying they will not, but yet what does that mean for movement of the refugees across counties and how that will impact the area? And also, I think many of the public folks are not well informed as far as the present situation by the number of refugees coming here and the reductions that have taken place. For at one time, I think we were up over 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, and this past year was less than 1,000, and projections are less than 500 for the state of Minnesota this next year. So, yeah. So we'll get more information and then proceed with that. So, yeah.
We had been doing an annual, although the time frame slipped a little bit, an annual update, immigration update, and Human Services have played a significant role in that, but I would, if we're gonna have any discussion like that here at the board, I'd like to wrap that task into that and do them both at the same time. But punchline is that the assistance to immigration, when all is said and done, it's going to be ultimately similar to the way generations have done it in the last hundreds and hundreds of years, and that is a few people immigrate to a new area and they learn the system and then bring their friends and family. And the idea that we can facilitate that or make something happen that goes against that historical pattern is unrealistic, but you know, that has to be the traditional way, has to be part of any solution.
Okay. Anyone else?
It
No.
works.
Yeah. Steve?
And I believe, is it the Sheriff's Department has the swearing in an awards
Yes.
ceremony
That's
too today? That's at 4, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
4 o'clock?
That's great.
Okay.
Okay, good. We're at the last meeting for me as chair this year, and I just want to say I appreciate the effort by staff and my colleagues. You know, throughout the year, we've had a good number of issues come by the dais, and you know, I appreciate the support we've had in some of those things, and also the dissent. I mean, I know I lost a few 4-1, and that's okay. I feel good about the way we work together and the way we can express our opinions and the differences there as well. It's been a great opportunity for me to serve as board, and Commissioner Lenzmeyer, I think you're going to be taking the gavel in January, and appreciate, you know, passing that on to you. Also, I want to just reiterate, community, come on out January 3rd to Quarry Park to ski. It's been a great event in the past. This year we have some snow, so come on out there and take a look at that facility if you haven't been out there. Other than that, I want to wish folks a Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and looking forward to 2020. So with that, we'll adjourn. Oh,
Nice family gavel.
Yeah.